Sometimes my statements may sound like a lecture, and if that's the case, I offer my apologies. My sole purpose is to share my vision through this book, in the hope that it can help others engaged in self-development or self-discovery. I also want to extend a helping hand to those who may have become confused or disappointed due to the wrong application of the original law of attraction. Many of them feel like they have become lost in a maze of conflicting information. This topic is close to my heart because I was once one of those seekers, looking for answers. Millions of people have tried to apply positive thinking and the law of attraction to achieve their goals and lead a fulfilling life. However, only a small percentage seems to be truly successful in this. This raised the question for me whether something essential might be missing in the original law of attraction, something that only a select group of people seem to understand. I continued the journey. Chapter 3. Thinking Differently. The ultimate goal is to build a bridge between science and spirituality, and that is what humanity will soon achieve. We all know that we use only a small percentage of our brains in our daily activities. But what if we could unlock the full potential of our human brain, body, and perhaps even our soul? But does a soul exist? Is there a greater power of which we are not fully aware? And is there a way to unlock a new part of our brains through training, changing our thought patterns, or using technology? We learn more about ourselves every day, with new studies and theories regularly emerging, as it is in our human nature to seek answers and explore new avenues of evolution. The universal manifestation theory outlined in this book could reopen the debate about our mental capabilities by emphasizing irrefutable evidence of a greater power among us, without myths, without nonsense. We can genuinely attempt to expand our consciousness and knowledge by striving for a higher level of wisdom, because that is what we achieve while seeking a greater truth and gaining mental strength. From a new perspective, we may discover and explain why emotional changes occur, why certain thoughts become reality, while others fade away, sometimes right before our eyes. The so-called law of attraction became immensely popular worldwide, but it lacked a crucial element. It lacked the balance of life, something that has been considered very important by sages throughout the ages. In our modern society, we have never really attempted to understand what this balance truly entails and what it means. If it was so important in the past, and if it is based on something universal in the cosmos, why is it ignored today? I am not convinced that our ancestors were ignorant or wasted their time on unimportant matters. On the contrary, I believe they were much more connected to nature and its mysteries. But today, we are not told to look at the balanced elements in life. It is not talked about. It is not taught in schools. No wonder nobody is focused on it. Humanity is still in its infancy. I can't put it better than that. Now is the time to take the next step. The time is ripe. Why shouldn't we pay attention to it, just as all our ancestors did? Some might argue that they had nothing better to do. But even that answer would suggest that these individuals had become skilled at it, had invested time in it. Everything comes back sooner or later, but to see that, we need to zoom out on the timeline. Look at history from a different perspective, and temporarily set aside our short-term thinking. The theory I have written could explain why everything in life has both a positive and negative side, why everything has its opposite, including our personal emotions that seem to appear in waves, and how the manifestation process of a thought works. My main focus has always been on human emotions. I simply wondered if changes in emotions occur randomly, or if there is actually a pattern of shifts that we have not yet discovered. When we have the courage to analyze our personal lives and take the time to observe our own behavior, we must admit that negative emotions must be felt for a person to recognize, understand, and experience happiness, joy, or pleasure, and vice versa. Some people don't want to accept a negative explanation and refuse to acknowledge that fear, sadness, or pain play a role, but we cannot run away from the truth. It is already an inherent part of our lives, and it serves a purpose. It is better to embrace the facts than to deny them. As humans, we would not be able to appreciate positive emotions without the contrast of negative emotions. Without this contrast, there would be no valuable experiences. We would be emotionally numb. This is precisely what some medications do. They suppress emotions and thought processes, causing people to behave like brainwashed zombies, deprived of new experiences. I do not mean to imply that all medications are bad. Some people truly need them. However, we should not underestimate the power of these medications. To understand that this balance is a reality, we can look at certain coincidences in life, such as the fact that many celebrities had a difficult childhood before becoming successful. Could there be a pattern? Could it be that celebrities in their later lives experienced the opposite of what they went through in their youth, and that this explains why they now seem to have everything they desire? While we can see a pattern, it is not proof on its own. It is not sufficient. On the other hand, children who become famous at a young age often face challenges and issues as they grow into adulthood, such as depression, drug abuse, and even tragic situations like child abuse and suicides. There is truth in the saying that there is somehow a balance. But can life really be so simple? How could we have overlooked such a clear pattern or cycle? This balance can only be explained when we try to understand that everything on this planet and throughout the universe is structured in the same way. If we look deeper into life itself, we see that everything has two sides, a positive and a negative, yin and yang, alpha and omega, above and below, day and night, death and life, weak and strong, dark and light, beginning and end, and so on. Without knowing how warmth feels, we could never grasp the concept of cold. We would not be able to define it. It would just exist. Without knowing how failure feels, we would never strive for success. Without the understanding of loss and absence, we would not comprehend the value of acquisition and possession. After all these years, it still appears to be Albert Einstein who may provide us with the answer we long for. He has indeed bestowed upon us the knowledge of the fundamental building blocks of life, the universal structure and behavior of every particle in our universe. This encompasses not only the particles that constitute humanity, but also our bodies, minds, and perhaps even our souls. My theory rests upon this behavior of particles, combined with the actual presence of patterns and cycles in life. If this theory proves to be correct, Einstein has assisted us in unraveling the secret behind the law of attraction, the true force that not only manifests thoughts, but encompasses everything. The scientific insights possessed by this man were nothing short of extraordinary. He has left us a crucial clue, the missing scientific puzzle piece that might explain why all things exist, why we possess the power to create our own reality, why we can build things, undergo experiences of various kinds, think, feel, love, hate, and so on. We bear witness to some incredible knowledge and theories that have emerged from the mind of this remarkable individual. What if he has also provided us with the missing link to explain the universal phenomenon of the power of creation itself? Imagine that all the necessary information has been at our fingertips all these years. We simply did not recognize it. When we attempt to understand Albert Einstein's famous theory of quantum entanglement from a different perspective than usual, we can conclude that Einstein was close to revealing the secret of the balance of life. He posited that when a particle is split in two, both pieces remain connected, regardless of the distance between them. Furthermore, both new pieces, or particles, retain all the properties of the original particle before the split. Finally, these two pieces behave in opposite ways and move in opposite directions once separated. Einstein referred to this as spooky action, or communication at distance. However, this theory was never fully expanded upon to explain the balance of life. This knowledge, shrouded in almost complete darkness, might just be the key to explaining everything around us. This includes all aspects of our universe, including the reason why we feel what we feel, why coincidences are more than mere chance, why humans have the power to make new discoveries using our brains, why rainbows form, why seasons change, and even why some individuals in the past seemed capable of predicting future events. What if we possess the power to predict future events by understanding the present? Isn't that what people are trying to achieve on Wall Street? Did ancient sages actually grasp the secrets of the balance of life? Did they know that certain negative events would occur in the future because they foresaw them? Did they anticipate such setbacks because during their lifetime, they observed positive events, and vice versa? Did they understand that every action has a reaction, that everything carries consequences, and that nothing can exist without its opposite? There had to be something they knew, something we have not yet discovered at this moment. It is crucial to analyze who we are and where we come from, how our thought patterns are shaped, and how our belief system is created. When parents, teachers, or even our government try to convince us that something is impossible, it is essential to look at the history of our species. It is evident that humanity has already achieved incredible feats and produced unimaginable creations that were once deemed impossible. When does something become possible or impossible? Is everything we know at this moment all there is, or will we open our eyes and strive for more knowledge to achieve even greater accomplishments as a species, as biological and evolving beings? Why not challenge life to see how far we can push it, and where it might take us if more of us were to do so? Do we often say something is impossible because of what we've learned to believe? Because others are convinced they cannot do or achieve something? Is it because we lack confidence in our own abilities, in our own future? Are we afraid to dream big, to experience pain, endure disappointments, or are we simply afraid of the unknown? Or perhaps we are so naive as to think that we have nearly reached the limit of our capabilities, that we have achieved everything, that we almost understand every mystery that surrounds our bodies and minds. The truth is, nothing is impossible until we begin to believe that it is. This seems to be the golden rule. This is also what you will read in thousands of self-help and motivation books on the market, but it is also precisely what ancient sages understood. There are no limits. But how can we move immovable objects? How can we perceive light in complete darkness? How can we believe in something we have never seen, heard, or experienced? That's where the power of our mind comes into play. Our visions, expectations, and hopes are powerful enough to imagine what does not yet exist. Doesn't that sound like magic? We will never step outside the small box in which we live if we continue to hold on to useless judgments, beliefs about life, and the opinions of others. Words are often spoken or written by people with closed minds, but their words can be considered truth and are often passed on. This is how ignorance spreads from one person to another, and unfortunately, this happens on a large scale. It is our responsibility to think independently rather than blindly follow. We will never be able to fulfill our dreams if we cannot find confidence in ourselves, if we do not believe in our own abilities. This is what every guru, spiritual person, or open-minded individual would tell you. In fact, belief comes down to having confidence in a positive outcome. This is what keeps us going day in and day out. However, a lack of belief in the present due to our past personal experiences is not wise. It would be wiser if we try to see the bigger picture of how thoughts, feelings, and experiences actually function. We must fully understand what they are, why they exist, and how we can use them to our advantage. What if we were to understand that some things must go wrong to transform them into something good? The past is gone, and all we have is our future, which begins right now. Here and now is where everything happens. We can actually use negative moments from the past to create a better future. We can learn by observing our own behavior and by accepting negativity in our lives. Rome wasn't built in a day, but the first wall probably was. Right now, we can lay the first stone for building a new future. No matter how small that stone may seem, we can place it there. This brings us to one of the important issues related to the original theory of the law of attraction. People may start to view themselves as all-powerful beings with immediate and unlimited power, which can lead to reckless behavior and hasty decisions. Let's go back to the story of the Porsche I bought. Not that I considered myself a god, but I pushed myself too hard, tried to speed things up, and didn't allow the car to come into my life naturally. Pursuing dreams with the idea that you are almost invincible and can achieve anything can lead to dangerous situations, financial problems, and even despair if expectations are not met. Walking on clouds, egotism, and making wrong decisions can cause people to lose touch with reality. Reading one book on manifesting desires doesn't mean that life immediately gives you everything you want. Life still processes the thoughts you've had in the past. Some manifestations take more time, while others happen quickly. That's why there's always a transition period when you start creating new realities with your mind, when you plant new beliefs. This is further explained in this book. No one can build a skyscraper in one day. All we can do is start where we are, one small step at a time. Change takes time, and the sooner we start, the faster we make progress. The words, "You have to learn to walk before you can run," carry a lot of truth. We need to take each step with confidence, belief, and patience, allowing ourselves the time needed before moving on to the next one. We can consciously use time to achieve something for the greater good, to accomplish our goals, to create the life we desire. What do we have to lose? If we keep worrying about the steps we have to take in the future, we limit ourselves. If we focus on obstacles, we don't build a solid foundation in the present. This can ultimately lead to our dreams collapsing. Time is precious, and years fly by. If we want to build a better life for ourselves, our children, and our family, we can't afford to waste too much time. Dreams can become reality if we put love and passion into every step we take, even if it means doing things we'd rather avoid. It may sound unrealistic, but nothing will change if we cling to old habits and fear leaving our comfort zone. Everything in life takes time to grow, just like seeds sprout and our universe expands. It's up to us to give ourselves the freedom to follow our own path, which also means giving ourselves the time, patience, and courage to move forward toward our personal destiny, our goals, our dreams. We don't need to worry too much about the slowness of our progress. What's essential is that we hold on to our belief and trust that we are making progress, no matter how slow this process may seem or how many detours we may have to take. It's crucial to understand that we are in the right place and on the right path at any given moment. The future is uncertain, even when we think we know it. It's important to realize that moving slowly is always better than standing still or repeating the past. Page 57, 71. When it seems like the world around us is collapsing, that's often the moment when changes are happening. It's beautiful to witness how life is constantly evolving, even when it sometimes appears that time is standing still. As humans, we aren't always aware of what's truly happening on our planet, and even on a deeper level, we don't understand everything. That's okay because evolution is an ongoing process, and the fact that we are still growing and discovering is a reason for hope and wonder. When we fall, it's crucial that we get up to continue our journey. If we remain down and don't move forward, we experience stagnation or, even worse, loss. It may sound harsh, but in reality, it's a fact that prolonged depression or frustration can negatively affect the physical body. At a certain point, the body may cease to function due to prolonged emotional stress. For instance, this can be observed in elderly individuals who pass away shortly after losing their life partner, even after decades of being together. Holding onto low emotional frequencies can have negative consequences for the future. This insight came to me when I went through depression myself. It took me years to climb out of it, with small steps forward and occasional setbacks. I forgot that all things in life tend to grow, expand, develop, learn, and evolve, both positive and negative emotions. But what happens to us when we get stuck in a limited world full of anger, sadness, or disappointment? What happens when we only see ourselves as victims, as helpless beings without hope or power to face challenges or overcome bad experiences? What happens when we no longer have goals in our lives? What happens when we don't allow ourselves to experience love, abundance, and authenticity? These negative feelings and events in our lives also serve a purpose. They remind us that we are alive. They force us to be aware of our existence and our experiences. It's important to remember that bad emotions are often triggered by relationships and the structure of our society, including all the rules set to maintain the status quo. It's reassuring to know that every negative emotion has an opposite positive emotion. This thought should calm and comfort us. Problems can disappear, sometimes overnight. Nothing lasts forever. Once we accept a particular problem and consider it a part of our lives, we understand that most problems are temporary and part of a larger whole. At that moment, we can activate our free will to make conscious changes. Regardless of whether we believe in it or not, we always have the choice of how we want to feel. This requires training and control over our thought process. Once we recognize a problem, half of the solution is already completed, because we then have the opportunity to act differently. We acknowledge that something didn't go as planned, and from that point on, it can only get better or worse, depending on our emotional response. How do we handle our personal challenges? Do we continue the same approach when problems arise? Have we ever analyzed our own behavior while in a negative state of mind? Do we expect different results while maintaining the same approach? The second part of problem solving is taking action. We must confront the problem head-on, even if it means facing our deepest fears. Everyone possesses the inner strength to rise when we fall. This inner strength is often referred to as the power of love. But is that all there is? Is there a greater power, a universal energy field, or a guide that leads us through life as if it were a road trip? Is there already a solution to all our problems before they even occur? It's a frustrating thought that we also have the power to extinguish that divine fire within us. We can actually slow down or sabotage our own evolution and personal development by interrupting the positive and negative emotions we experience simply through the improper use of our thoughts. Everything in our lives has a reason, and if we think we can escape it, we are mistaken. We have the power to bring ourselves down through negative thinking, nurturing doubt, reliving the past, holding on to old beliefs, listening to others who claim to have solutions to our problems, and in countless other ways to cling to a low frequency of emotions. We can literally destroy our path to happiness at any moment, even when we've just begun to make progress and started feeling better. It's all about mental strength, and has nothing to do with our physical strength. On the other hand, when our bodies feel weak, our minds often follow that pattern because good and bad things never seem to come alone. We are often raised with the idea that we are mere spectators in our own lives, dependent on the random events that life brings us. But aren't we also responsible for what we attract in our lives? After reading this book, you might conclude that you are entirely responsible for your life. But that's not always the case. Life brings us challenges and setbacks that are necessary for our growth. So believing that your life will always be fantastic from today onwards is simply unrealistic. I wish it were different, and I'm sorry to say this, but it's unrealistic to think that a person can go through life without worries or stress. There is only one way to stop disappointments or sorrow in your life, and that is when you also stop attracting opposite positive feelings. This principle is sometimes practiced by certain priests, monks, or other religious individuals. It's similar to making an offering to God. You simply give up all pleasure in exchange for a peaceful life in silence or even isolation, even if they are not fully aware of how this is part of the balanced structure of life. Another example is leading a celibate life, which is a drastic choice with the same goal in mind. Athletes provide yet another similar perspective. They make their bodies suffer to become stronger, so the more effort they put into their training, the stronger they become. However, this often involves spending more time in pain and hardship. They also have the option of doing nothing, which means no suffering, but also no improvement in their body or skills. No pain, no gain. When you feel physically weak, it doesn't mean you have to give up control over your mind. You can at least try to remain optimistic or focused on improvement, because there's no reason for your mind to be sick if your body isn't. If you lose control of your health condition, there's no better option than taking control of your thought process. That's the first thing we need to do. At the same time, however, we must also take steps to ensure that our body gets better or fully heals. Whether that means seeing a doctor, taking medication, undergoing surgery, or seeking other solutions. Pain is one of the most challenging things to overcome. And in many cases, it seems almost impossible in the short term. When suffering from pain, it's hard to stay positive and challenging to focus on the fact that it's likely temporary. When a serious life-changing health issue strikes you, it's even harder to believe that you can learn to live with it, accept it, or maybe even overcome it. People diagnosed with a permanent, severe, potentially life-threatening illness are told to accept it. But can you imagine the mental struggle these individuals must go through? Our minds are not naturally trained to do that, so pain, illness, or receiving bad news can truly have a deep impact on our lives, similar to losing a loved one. Gaining control over your mind is important and can be learned through practice. The best way to start is in small steps. For example, when you catch yourself thinking negatively or passing judgment, you can say to yourself, "Here I go again." You can also start by observing the reactions, complaints, or patterns that keep recurring in other people. One thing is certain, we don't have to let our minds randomly produce negative thoughts. It may seem like this is normal and natural, but we must not forget that these thoughts and the emotions produced by these thoughts are the result of our previous thoughts. We all create our own way of thinking as we grow up. We all have our own way of looking at problems, how we analyze information we come into contact with, how we interact with other human beings, how we process daily news, how we express or suppress our emotions, and so on. But in reality, we can choose what we think in any situation, regardless of when or where. Fortunately, we still have free will to use our minds to think whatever we want to think, and also the free will to decide how we deal with the feelings or emotions created by these thoughts. Once we begin to change our way of thinking, we create new rituals, a new standard, new defaults for our minds. This is necessary if we want to control the many random negative thoughts that pop up out of nowhere. Knowing that these emotions are usually created by our thoughts is very important for our understanding. However, how do we deal with, remove, or respond to negative thoughts that randomly pop up? Do you ignore them? Is it even possible to ignore them? How long do we exactly complain about one specific problem? And how many years have we been doing this? When does a problem actually disappear? Have you taken the time to look at some old but resolved issues in your life? Have you tried to understand how some problems appeared and disappeared in an instant? What were your thoughts at those moments, and how did you feel? It's clear that it's not a real fault that we don't fully understand how our brains work. It's what makes us human at this point in time, and will be part of our evolutionary history on planet Earth. Almost all of humanity keeps repeating the same mistakes, constantly hoping for different results. So, we are not alone in this battle with ourselves. Take a look at your friends and family, and pay attention to their individual characteristics, and especially their life experiences that you are aware of. Isn't it strange that every person has a specific problem that keeps recurring, whether it's relationship issues, financial problems, health issues, and so on? Isn't it odd that everyone always has problems with a specific type of person they judge or complain about? Isn't it always the same person who is late for work? Always the same person getting fined for speeding? The same employee in conflict with the boss? The same person ending up with an aggressive or violent partner, and so on? There's a pattern, but we must be willing to talk about it. Why shouldn't we? I am convinced that the lack of knowing everything is what drives humanity to explore the limits of our capabilities. It's this quest that is clearly responsible for our growth, and the primary reason for our evolution. We intentionally create new reasons to improve ourselves. We certainly can't make anything disappear from our lives without making any effort, such as changing our attitude, adjusting our thought patterns, modifying our body language, learning to stand up for ourselves, or for some people, even learning how to keep our mouths shut. This is important because many people literally talk without following their intuition, just to keep a conversation going or to win a debate. We often see this in small talk or when an awkward silence occurs during a conversation. Even when we're done talking, we can feel pressure to say something because things are getting uncomfortable. That's actually a sign that the conversation is over or that the main points have been discussed. The same happens in unpleasant verbal discussions or conflicts. Most people say things they don't want to say. Others keep rehashing the past, and still others might even raise their voices. Sometimes people even start saying deliberately nonsensical things when there's a moment of silence during an argument, as if they'd rather escalate the argument than accept that the silence is there for a reason. Actions speak louder than words, and once we learn to use our minds correctly, the chances of speaking words that can harm others or ourselves decrease. So if not speaking has the potential to improve a situation, we can consider it. We can improve our lives on so many levels. But why not start with the most important part, the part we often overlook? Can you imagine how the world would look if everyone stopped underestimating the power of thoughts, judgments, or verbal expressions in general? But we have to start somewhere. And fortunately, we are seeing more knowledge and life-changing insights on social media and even on television. If we continue to spread words of true wisdom, let's see where that takes us as a species. Of course, without expecting that it won't make a difference, because that would be another judgment that doesn't help us. Wouldn't our society look brighter? At the very least, some sort of shift is happening, and we are making progress. There's a reason why I haven't really mentioned much about the universal manifestation theory itself, but what you're reading now is a significant part of the foundation to understand the theory.